Exposed, 7 spine-chilling paranormal encounters soldiers discovered in forbidden Ukraine secrets. The air was electric with secrets. Soldiers returning from Ukraine whispered of the impossible. Strange figures darting behind trees, shadows that twisted into shapes. Whispers echoed from the woods at night. The Dark Walker, they called it. Legend spoke of a spirit that had been cursed, tied to the ground, feeding off fear, hiding in the margins of reality. Soldiers reported cold spots, sudden chills seeping into their bones. One veteran claimed he saw a figure looming, eyes glowing like lost stars. Jake Miller knew those tales from his youth. He often laughed them off as stories told by firelight, built over years of fright and legend. But after his deployment, where he battled more than just the enemy, he felt the truth of those tales crawl under his skin. Returning home was supposed to bring comfort, but there was a weight in the air, thick with something sinister. As the bus rolled into the dusty lot of his hometown, the familiar scent of sweet corn and late summer grass filled his lungs, a bittersweet reminder of carefree days spent on bikes and splashing in the river. But joy twisted with unease, laughter felt like a distant memory now, shadows lurking in the corners of his mind. Before, this town had been an oasis of camaraderie, but the air buzzed with tension, palpable as a lightning storm brewing on the horizon. Days passed in a fog as he reconnected with his family. His mother sat in her chair, withdrawn and trembling, haunted by restless nights that left her eyes void of light. His teenage sister, caught in the awkwardness of adolescence, avoided his gaze as if it pained her to confront the past. The happy chatter of their household had turned to muted whispers, as if the walls themselves were listening. The oddness of it all weighed on him. Creaking floors, flickering lights, the whispers that seemed to echo his own lingering trauma from Ukraine. It didn't take long for the odd occurrences to escalate. Noises at night, soft and indistinct, chilling winds that swept the house empty of warmth. Flickering lights danced to the rhythm of his thudding heart, reminding him of a presence he thought he had left behind. Flicking through memories, he remembered the mission gone wrong in Ukraine. The Dark Walker seemed long buried, but with each encounter, Jake realized he had unwittingly resurrected an old evil. Determined to protect his family, he called on childhood friends, scattered yet still bound by those golden days of laughter. They gathered on a stormy night, beneath a sky thick with black clouds, lightning illuminating their anxious faces. They shared old stories, recalling the Dark Walker, the local legend of a spirit born from tragedy. But as stories spilled, resentment and pain bubbled to the surface. Was his return to blame for resurrecting this ancient evil? The malevolent force they had only half believed in tensioned the air like a tightrope. Each of them carried hidden secrets sure to haunt them as shadows crept closer. Then the house shook, a violent tremor that matched the frantic beat of their hearts, deep laughter echoing through the walls. Just as a scream cut through the night, instinct screamed that something terrible had awakened. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the storm raged outside, Jake stood rooted to the spot, battling his desperation. The chaos swirled as friendships splintered under pressure, their shared history rising like smoke. With dread, he realized the truth: they had awakened. More than memories, they had stirred something monstrous. Eyes wide, Jake faced the flickering candlelight as an icy whisper grazed his neck. Were they strong enough to confront the dark truth that clung to their town, or would their frayed ties sever them entirely? In that moment, he knew they had only begun to unravel the horrors waiting to be faced. The sound of shattering glass erupted through the tension in the living room, drawing everyone's gaze toward the old picture frame that had fallen from the wall. The crackle of lightning illuminated the shattered shards, glinting sinisterly like teeth scattered across the carpet. Jake swallowed hard, his pulse racing. He knew this was no accident. The air thickened with unease. What was that? Sarah, Jake's sister, whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I don't know," he managed to say, though his thoughts raced. They had awakened the Dark Walker, and now it was demanding attention. The group, once fellow childhood adventurers, felt more like strangers now, an invisible chasm swallowing their shared history. Each flickering candle light cast unsettling shadows on their faces. Jake's friends exchanged anxious glances, fear creeping deeper. They had called upon this spirit by dredging up the past, and now it was reaching out like a long-desired embrace, except it was cold and filled with malice. "Maybe we should just go," said Tom, his voice trembling. "Maybe we can forget all this." "Forget?" Jake snapped, an edge in his voice, betraying the gnawing anxiety rattling inside him. "You think running will fix this? It's not just going to go away." "Yes, right," Lisa said softly, her face pale and eyes wide. "We opened a door. What if it doesn't shut?" The split-second silence broke as another blast of wind barreled through the house, rattling windows like desperate hands trying to gain entry. The lights flickered again before plunging the room into darkness, a silence that pressed against them like a weight. Heartbeats thudded in Jake's ears, each pulse feeling like another reminder of the entity they had unwittingly invited back. Sarah's voice cut through the darkness, barely a whisper. "What if it's following you?" He squeezed his eyes shut, gripping the table until his knuckles turned white. Memories of Ukraine flooded back, the chaos, the shadows, the lingering feeling of being watched. They weren't just stories, they carried the scent of the graveyard, scents he had often tried to forget. The candle flame sputtered, illuminating the room just long enough for Jake to see each friend's fear striped across their faces, mirroring his own. And that laughter, that deep, mocking laughter from outside, it grew louder, wrapping around them, curling into their ears like smoke. "Do you hear that?" Tom finally whispered, eyes darting toward the window. "It's here," Jake breathed, conviction in his voice. "Whatever we stirred up, it's right outside." With a renewed sense of panic, the group huddled closer, pushing together as if their combined presence could shield them from the horrors lurking just beyond. As they shared silent glances, a crack of thunder echoed, drowning out their thoughts. "Does anyone have a plan?" Lisa's voice sliced through the weight of silence. There was a collective hesitation, and with every second that ticked by, dread seeping deeper into their bones like the biting wind. Jake felt a sudden resolve surging through him. They needed to confront this entity, to face whatever had been awakened. But the price for confronting the darkness? He wasn't sure any of them were prepared for it. As the shadows moved just outside their door, an echo of whispers began to fill the room, wrapping around them in a chilling embrace. Jake clenched his fists, ready for battle, but one thought burned above all others: would they stand together, or would fear pit them against each other? As they readied themselves, the door creaked open, revealing just enough darkness to consume their resolve. Jake stepped forward, heart pounding, and in that moment, he knew this was only the beginning. But what awaited them on the other side of the door? Was it the Dark Walker, or something far more sinister? Jake took a deep breath, his heartbeat drumming like a war chant in his ears. The door stood ajar, an inky void beyond it that promised horrors he could only imagine. He felt a hand grip his shoulder, firm, steady. It was Sarah, her wide eyes boring into him, seeking reassurance. But he had none to offer. The faint gust of wind slipped through the crack, carrying with it whispers that slithered around them, pulling at their minds like tendrils of smoke. Each word unformed, yet charged with a meaning that seeped into the corners of his brain, stirring memories he wished to leave buried. "Whatever happens, we stay together," Jake said, his voice more assertive than the churning dread inside him. They nodded, catching glimpses of resolve and fear intermingling in the flickering candlelight. Just then, another deafening crack of thunder erupted, shaking the very foundation of the house. Rain began to hammer against the windows like 1,000 tiny fists, and as if on cue, the lights flickered once more before sputtering out completely, plunging them into overwhelming darkness. "Jake! The candles!" Lisa cried, panic lacing her voice as they stood in pitch-black stillness. Jake's fingers trembled as he fumbled around the table for matches, his heart racing like a freight train. The whispers intensified, merging into a chorus that hummed in rhythm with the storm outside, a chilling symphony that sent shivers down his spine. Finally, he struck a match, and its flame burst to life, illuminating their surroundings, if only for a moment. The shadows danced eerily against the walls, and Jake could see the haunting expressions on his friends' faces, terror etched into every feature. "Do you think it's looking for us?" Sarah whispered, her voice a thread of fear that wrapped around them like a vice. "I don't know," Jake replied, glancing toward the door again, half expecting a figure to emerge. "But I know we can't let it in." With a shaky breath, he tossed the match onto the table where it ignited a small pile of papers. Flames licked up, spreading warmth but also a healthy reminder of their peril. Light fought desperately against the encroaching shadows, but how long could it hold? Suddenly, the door creaked wider, drawn by an invisible hand. The darkness beyond pulsed, as if alive and breathing, a threat inching toward them. "Get back!" Jake shouted. But it was too late. The shadows gathered, swirling and morphing, revealing a twisted shape, something grotesque and ancient. Its form flickered and shifted, eyes a molten abyss that bore into their souls. "Together!" Jake shouted again, rallying his friends, who now stood shoulder to shoulder, fear replaced by a flicker of defiance. But as the entity advanced, a torrential wind erupted from the doorway, knocking them backward. The candles flickered dangerously, and for a moment, Jake's world spun, their unity shattered. One by one, the friends were pulled into darkness as if the entity were selectively claiming its prey, laughter echoing in the howling wind. "Jake! Help!" Sarah's scream sliced through the chaos. "No!" Jake lunged forward, feeling the pull of despair clawing at him. But there was something else, too, an urge to flee, a deep-seated instinct that screamed at him to abandon them, to save himself. He hesitated, gripped by the terrifying weight of choice: stay or go, fight or run. Then, as if sensing his indecision, the shadows twisted and coiled around his feet. He was frozen, trapped in a moment that felt timeless, the laughter growing louder, drowning out Sarah's cries. And just like that, a vision flashed before him, memories of Ukraine, the dark corners of a life he had fought to leave behind, colliding with the present. "Jake!" Tom shouted, pulling him back. "We have to go." But as they scrambled away, something inside Jake sparked. He couldn't let the darkness win. This wasn't the end. He turned towards the doorway one last time, heart pounding, ready to confront whatever truth awaited him, but would he discover the strength to face it, or would the darkness claim them all? Jake's heart thundered in his chest, a battle drum echoing through the chaos as he fought the grip of terror that rooted him to the floor. The fiery glow of the candles flickered defiantly, casting wavering shadows that twisted and morphed into horrifying shapes on the walls. Each second felt like an hour, the weight of the darkness pressing closer, suffocating. "Hold on, hold on!" he shouted as he lunged forward, the panic of his friends' cries fueling him. He felt the icy fingers of the entity reach for him, a freezing breath whispering secrets of despair. The room seemed alive with malevolence, a web of shadows crackling with energy. Suddenly, Tom was beside him, his expression wild with determination. "We can't let it break us. We have to fight." "Fight? How do we fight something we can't even see?" Sarah gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. "Together," Jake declared, his voice rising above the tumult. "We're stronger together." He could see that flame of hope flickering in their eyes, even as dread threatened to snuff it out. With a nod of shared purpose, they huddled close, forming a fragile barrier against the encroaching darkness. The entity paused, sensing their resolve, but just for a moment. The darkness roared, a cacophony of rage mixed with laughter that echoed off the walls, sending a shiver down their spines. "Focus!" Jake shouted. "Just focus. Think of something that makes you feel strong." Memories came rushing back like floodwaters, picking up his father's guitar, the beauty of a summer sunrise over the fields in Ukraine, the laughter shared around a campfire. Each thought was a lifeline, pulling him back from the brink. "Imagine the light," Lisa exclaimed, her voice stronger now. "We can bring the light back." Jake shut his eyes, feeling the pulse of air around him, the heartbeat of his friends merging with his own. He pictured a brilliant light of fire that would cleanse the shadows, a warmth that would push the darkness away. As the energy coalesced, a glow began to rise from the center of their circle, a soft yet fierce illumination that pulsed in rhythm with their combined heartbeats. The entity screeched in fury, the darkness recoiling momentarily from the radiant force. "Now!" They shouted in unison, thrusting their hands forward as the light surged, pushing back the shadows. The walls glimmered with an otherworldly glow, illuminating the horrifying visage of the entity, the smirk of hatred etched on its menacing face. With each ounce of their shared strength, they pushed. The darkness shrieked, spiraling away from the light, revealing broken pictures on the wall, remnants of lives lost to despair, but the entity wasn't defeated. It writhed and twisted, dark tendrils clutching at their ankles, pulling them down into its abyss. "You think you can banish me? I am your past. I will always be a part of you. Not if we break free of you," Jake yelled, shaking off the cold grip. He could feel the strength coursing through him, a flame ignited by the memories they shared. "We are not alone." As the entity lunged again, fangs bared, the light pulsed brighter. It encased them in a glowing sphere, pushing them forward. The shadows screamed, but the warmth wrapped them like a blanket, rejuvenating their spirit even as temptation of despair hovered so close. With one last surge, they burst forth, pushing back against the dark until it shattered like glass, pieces of shadow scattering into oblivion. But just as victory seemed within reach, the ground trembled beneath them. Cracks formed, snaking across the floor like the claws of a beast waking from slumber. An ominous growl rumbled through the air, vibrating in their bones. "What now?" Tom breathed, his voice tinged with disbelief. As the others stood frozen, Jake took a step back, glancing toward the door. The voices he had tried to resist rippled through the air, more insistent than ever. They bore secrets he had never wanted to hear, of people lost, of choices made, of truths he had buried deep. "I think it's not over yet," he murmured, eyes wide. In that moment, they were all drawn to the remaining sliver of shadow slipping out from the doorway, beckoning like an old friend. And the question loomed heavy in the air like the storm outside: would they dare to follow it into the unknown? The dark crack widened, pulsing as if it had a heartbeat of its own. The shadows rolled like thick smoke, cascading toward them with an otherworldly pull. Jake swallowed, a lump forming in his throat. He fought against his fear, the whispers twisting around him like tiny knives. "We have to move." Without waiting for a response, he turned and dashed toward the door, adrenaline coursing through his veins. Behind him, the shouts of his friends spurred him on. "Wait, Jake!" Sarah cried, a mix of urgency and fear in her voice. With a fierce determination, he flung the door open. The world beyond was a cacophony of howling wind, swirling leaves, and an eerie, dim glow that danced just out of reach. It was a world that seemed somehow both familiar and alien. Tom's hand grasped Jake's shoulder, halting him. "You're insane. We don't know what's out there." "This is where it all leads," Jake replied, his voice firm. "We can't go back. We have to uncover the truth. Or we could be walking straight into a trap." Lisa interjected, her eyes darting nervously. The shadows from within the room now intertwined around her feet, dragging slightly, as if the darkness had a mind of its own. Jake felt the pressure of their doubts, but the flicker of light in his mind urged him forward. "No, it's time we confront whatever this is. Together." With one last hesitant exchange of glances, the group stepped into the swirling night. The wind slapped against them like icy hands, and every step felt measured against an invisible weight. The landscape morphed before them, a series of ruins and twisted structures that rose from the earth like the skeletons of forgotten giants. Debris litters the ground, old photographs, shattered toys, remnants of lives disrupted. Every fragment whispered stories of loss, of longing, a past that refused to be silenced. "Look over there." Sarah pointed. Just ahead lay a large stone altar, carved with cryptic symbols that pulsed faintly as if they were alive. "What does that mean?" As they approached, Jake felt a cold shiver run down his spine, not from the chill of the air but from the overwhelming presence of something. It felt as if 1,000 eyes were watching them, waiting. Sarah reached out a trembling hand to touch the stone. "What if it's dangerous?" "Too late to back off now," Tom said grimly. "We need answers." Suddenly, the ground shuddered violently beneath them, and the altar erupted with a blinding flash. The symbols glowed intensely, swirling like a violent storm, casting shadows that swelled and twitched as if animated by sentient malice. "Something's coming," Lisa cried out, stumbling backward. The air thickened, weighing heavily on them. From the chaos, forms began to rise, figures cloaked in shadows, with hollow eyes that glared into their souls. Each figure bore the sorrow of lost choices, echoing their own fears back at them. "What are they?" Jake whispered, his breath hitching in his throat. "Wraiths, of the past." The voice was low and guttural, wrapping around them like a shroud. They turned to find the source, a figure cloaked in darkness, its face obscured but its intent unmistakable. "Who are you?" Jake reached for the light inside, feeling its warmth against the encroaching chill. "I am the darkness you know. The truth you fear. And now, you must choose. Face your past or let it consume your future." The group stood paralyzed, the weight of their memories crashing over them like waves. "Jake! Help!" A sudden scream cut through the air. It was Lisa, seized by one of the shadow figures, her eyes wide with terror as they pulled her into the dark embrace. "Grab her!" Tom yelled, reaching out, but another shadow lunged at him, knocking him to the ground. Chaos erupted as Jake fought against the darkness, feeling its cold grasp attempt to drag him down. The shadows writhed menacingly, their whispers turning to roars, dissonance rising with every second. "Stay strong. Remember the light," Jake shouted, pleading with his friends to hold on to their memories. As he struggled to free Lisa, another shadow surged, blocking his path. Jake's heart raced, coursing with desperation. "Don't let it take you," he yelled. But uncertainty hung thick in the air, smothering hope. With wild eyes, he realized the truth: to save Lisa, they would have to confront not just the darkness, but their own inner demons. They had to battle the shadows within themselves, but could they break free from the chains of their past before it consumed them all? The question echoed, swelling with dread, a daunting challenge looming before them. The shadows closed in, gnashing at their heels, hungry for despair. Jake felt the pull of the darkness, but he wouldn't allow fear to take him. Lisa's scream echoed sharply in his mind, igniting his resolve. "Hang on, Lisa!" he shouted, feeling adrenaline surge through him like fire. The chilling figure had her in a tight, suffocating grip, drawing her into its inky depths. Tom struggled against his own shadow, rolling on the ground as he kicked out wildly. "Get off me!" he roared, but the shadow only tightened its hold, wrapping around his legs with a visceral force. "Sarah, help him!" Jake yelled, still focused on Lisa. But Sarah stood frozen, paralyzed by the sight of the shadow wraith, fear striking her mute. "Do something!" Jake bellowed, and finally, Sarah shook herself back to reality. With trembling hands, she recalled the memory of their friendship, the laughter, the summer nights spent under the stars. "Jake!" she shouted, snapping out of her stupor. "What do we do? Think of the light. Focus on what matters," he urged, his eyes locked on Lisa, who was now thrashing in a desperate struggle against the shadow. "Remember the sun at the lake," Sarah said, her voice steadying. "That warmth." Jake, with every ounce of his being, clung to that memory, the warmth washing over them as they splashed in the water, carefree laughter mixing with the scent of summer. The darkness shifted around them, momentarily faltering, sensing their collective strength. "It's afraid." Tom grunted through gritted teeth, desperately focusing on his own cherished memories. "Don't let them separate us," Jake roared, summoning the courage within. "Together, we can beat this." In that moment, their minds united, the memories fusing into a radiant light that pushed against the shadows. Each friend returned to their anchors of happiness, flooding the air with warmth. As their shared light grew, it began to shimmer and pulse. The figures began to whimper and twist, repelled by the glow. Lisa's shadow wavered, releasing its grip as Jake lunged forward, catching her wrist and pulling her back into the light. Tears streamed down Lisa's cheeks, brimming with relief and fear. "I thought I lost you," she breathed, clutching his hand tightly, "but the battle wasn't over." The cloaked figure snarled, rage pooling in its hollow eyes. "You merely delay the inevitable. The past is your prison. Then let us break the chains." Jake yelled, fueled by the newfound hope. He gathered his friends, linking them shoulder to shoulder, fortified by their collective strength. With a unison that resonated like thunder, they shouted out, "We choose to embrace our past. We will not be ruled by fear." The energy surged afresh, a brilliant beacon of light unyielding against the dark. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as though burnt, the cloaked figure clawed at its face in rage, its form twisting and fading. "You think this is over? This is just the beginning." The acrid darkness blasted outward suddenly, the ground beneath them convulsed. Ruins crumbled, the altar crackling with energy as fissures erupted all around. "We need to go. Now!" Tom yelled, panic igniting urgency. With Lisa's hand in his, they dashed, the raging shadows still at their heels, witnessing the ground shift like treacherous quicksand beneath them. "This way." Sarah pointed, her instincts kicking in, leading them towards an archway carved between two ancient stone columns that glowed faintly. As they barreled through, they felt the pressure of the shadows claw at their backs, but the moment they crossed the threshold, everything behind them shattered into a cacophony of darkness. They stumbled forward into the new realm, then everything went quiet. The air shimmered, like a veil lifting, revealing another twisted landscape, one even more unsettling than the last. Jake's breath caught in his throat. They had escaped, but what awaited them now was a mystery laden with dread. All around was silence, yet Jake could still feel the tendrils of the darkness lingering close. "What have we wandered into?" he whispered, looking around at his friends, their faces matching his concern, but as they took their first steps into this new world, shadows flickered across the ground. A new, chilling presence loomed ahead, sending icy tendrils of fear creeping back into their hearts. Had they escaped the darkness, or had they simply walked straight into another trap? In that moment, the answer shimmered just out of reach, and the loud crack of a branch snapping shattered the silence behind them, and in that breath of uncertainty, the real test was about to begin. The stillness morphed into a suffocating tension, the air thick with an unseen weight. Jake's heart raced as he scanned their eerie surroundings, haunted by the face of the faded figure lurking behind them. It felt like they had been spewed out of a nightmare only to find themselves wrapped in a new one. "Did you hear that?" Lisa whispered, her voice trembling. A cold shiver ran down Jake's spine. The echoes of the snapping branch taunted them, reverberating through the silence like a warning bell. "Stay close," Jake urged, locking his fingers tighter around Lisa's. The shadows writhed eagerly, their vibrations pulsing like an impending storm. "We have to stick together. No matter what happens." Tom nodded, though fear flickered in his eyes. "Where are we?" he murmured, glancing at the twisted trees that seemed to lean in closer, as if eavesdropping on their thoughts. Ahead, the shadows thickened into a wall, absorbing the faint light like a ravenous beast. Without breaking stride, Sarah whispered, "What if this is the old place? The one they warned us about?" A wave of regret swept through Jake. "What if we shouldn't have come here?" "No turning back now," he replied, though he felt a pang of doubt. "We need to figure out what this place wants." They moved deeper into the new realm, their breaths shallow and quick. The ground was uneven, littered with twisted roots and shards of stone that cut into their soles. Each step felt charged, as if they were being watched from the shadows. Just then, a disembodied voice slithered through the air, cool and taunting. Did you really think escaping one darkness would bring you to the light? This is merely the edge of despair. Your true trial awaits. Jake froze, his blood running cold. What was that? He gasped, his eyes darting about, trying to pinpoint the source. We're not alone, Lisa whispered, clutching Jake's arm tighter. A chill flickered across the distance, prickling the back of his neck. Keep moving. We need to find shelter, he commanded, swallowing down his rising dread. If we can find something, anything, we might figure this out. They pressed on, each footstep echoing ominously as shadows danced around them. The air felt almost electric, crackling with anticipation. The landscape twisted unnaturally, with jagged rocks jutting out like the fangs of a beast. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that every sound, every whisper of the wind held a sinister purpose. Suddenly, a figure materialized before them draped in tattered cloth, its face obscured by a hood. The shadows coalesced around it, pulsing rhythmically as if breathing. Jake's heart lurched. Who are you? He demanded, trying to sound brave, but his voice trembled. The figure lifted its head slightly, revealing a glimpse of hollowed eyes that seemed to peer straight into his soul. You are not the first to wander into my domain, it hissed. But you carry the weight of memories untold. They will either be your salvation or your doom. Choose wisely. Lisa gasped. What do you mean? What memories? The cloaked figure raised a hand, and the shadows surged forward, coiling around each of them, probing their thoughts. Jake felt his past clawing its way to the surface, his fears, regrets, dark moments he thought were buried. Remember, the figure rasped, a smile breaking the darkness. Your past will deem your fate. Will you face it, or will you flee? An icy knot tightened in Jake's chest. We won't be trapped here. He screamed, desperation blending with determination, but what did it mean? Were they ready to confront their demons again? As the shadows encircled them tighter, Jake's mind raced. Each heartbeat pulsed with urgency. They had escaped one horror, but now they faced something infinitely darker. The lingering words of the figure gnawed at his resolve. What if uncovering the truth would be the very thing to shatter everything they once believed? And as the shadows tightened their grip, a chilling laugh echoed through the air, signaling that the worst was yet to come. Choose wisely, before time runs out. Jake took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Was this the moment where everything fell apart, or the chance for redemption? Only one thing was certain: the real test of their courage was just beginning. The shadows coiled like serpents around them, suffocating in cold. Jake felt the darkness press against his skin, seeking the cracks in his brave facade. What do we do? Tom whispered, his voice barely audible, strained and trembling. Focus on the now, Jake replied, forcing down the panic that simmered below the surface. We find a way out. The cloaked figure's laughter echoed again, sending waves of dread crashing over them. The shadows have thirsted for souls, and they know your fears. Will you let them consume you? Jake's heart pounded in his chest. He could almost hear its rhythm against the thick, damp air. He darted forward, tugging Lisa and Tom with him, trying to escape the figure's grasping shadows. This way. They stumbled through the darkness, the branches reaching for them like skeletal hands. Each crunch of leaves beneath their feet felt amplified, a countdown to some unknown doom. We need light. Sarah cried, her eyes wide with terror. Look. Lisa pointed towards a soft glow seeping through the trees, a faint beacon amidst the despair. Hope ignited within Jake, but doubt crept in, eager to snuff it out. What if it led right into the monster's lair? Do we risk it? Tom asked, skin pale under the scant illumination. We have no choice. Jake gritted his teeth, pushing onward. The shadows snarled behind them, agitated and hungry. As they pressed through the dense underbrush, the glow grew stronger, a warm, inviting pulse that contrasted sharply with the cold, clinging darkness. They soon emerged into a clearing, the night sky above them dotted with swirling stars, each twinkling like a distant promise, but just as relief flooded Jake's veins, the shadows slithered into the clearing, swirling like a tempest. The figure stood at the threshold, its hollow eyes piercing through the veils of twilight. "You think you've escaped? Your journey has just begun. What do you want from us?" Jake shouted, feeling a surge of defiance amidst the whirlpool of dread. The figure tilted its head, seemingly amused. "Every choice you make echoes in eternity. Will you surrender to the darkness, or will you fight? Choose wisely." A rush of cold wind swept through the clearing, extinguishing the light before them. The stars flickered and dimmed as if they too tethered on the edge of oblivion. Panic gripped Jake tightly. "We can't hide. We're losing our chance." "Then what do we do?" Sarah cried, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Memories, we face our memories." Jake blurted out. The earlier words of the figure circled like a predator around his mind. "Maybe it's the only way." "Are you insane?" Tom snapped. "What if it's a trap? Or it's our only salvation? We can't run forever." The ground rumbled beneath them, the land itself trembling with unseen forces. Shadows danced more insidiously, swirling like a living fog that beckoned to consume them whole. "Face your fears or let them feast," the figure taunted, its voice a cascading echo filled with malice. "What memories haunt you the most?" Jake's heart sank. He felt the weight of his past pressing down, threatening to collapse everything he had built around him. Suddenly, images flashed before his eyes: loved ones lost, moments of failure, choices made in desperation that reverberated with regret. He shuddered. If confronting this meant reliving his darkest moments, could he survive it? Before he could voice his trepidation, the shadows surged forward, wrapping around him like icy chains. Jake gasped, a frantic struggle against the impending darkness. "Jake!" Lisa shouted, reaching for him. But it was useless. The shadows began to pull him away, dragging him back toward the cloaked figure. In a twisted turn of fate, Jake's fear morphed into resolve. "I face my past," he roared, defiance leaking from every pore. "I will not let it consume me." The air exploded with energy, the shadows flickering as if uncertain. "So be it," the figure hissed, grinning wider, revealing a chaotic composition of teeth like jagged stones. Let the memories unfold. Suddenly, the world crumbled. Everything fractured and splintered. Darkness opened the door to Jake's history, and as he plummeted into his memories, soaring emotions of defiance turned into fear. What awaited in the depths of his soul? Would he rise above the shadows, or succumb to their insatiable grasp? With a final breath, Jake vanished into the void, the echoes of his past screaming into the abyss as the figure watched, satisfaction glimmering in its eyes. What horrors lay in wait for him? Would he be lost forever, or could he emerge with the strength to rewrite his story? The chilling laughter of the figure echoed once more, intertwining with Jake's heartbeat in the dying light. "Choose wisely, time is running out." Jake's world was a tumultuous kaleidoscope of fragmented memories. The void enveloped him like a heavy shroud, each moment a jagged edge that scraped against his soul. He felt himself falling through time, tumbling into the very essence of who he was, landing in the midst of chaos, a storm of emotions barely held at bay. He found himself in his childhood bedroom, nestled in a small town where shadows were once merely easy to ignore quirks of the night. His younger self was sitting on the bed, staring blankly at a wall stalactite with posters. "Dad's gone," he heard himself whisper, the words heavy and drenched in sorrow. It was a memory buried deep, an echo from the moment his father had left, leaving an emptiness that would haunt him. Suddenly, the shadows emerged from the corners of the room, creeping along the walls like ink splotches. "No. Not this!" Jake shouted, desperately trying to pull the younger version of himself away from the reminder. But the child seemed oblivious, trapped in a loop of grief. "Why did you leave us?" The child's voice trembled, resonating painfully in Jake's chest. He reached out to him, fingers extending through the darkness, but each time he tried to lift the boy's gaze from the wall, the shadows would clamp down tighter, pushing him away. A guttural laugh echoed from the depths, resonating with the cold entity that watched him from the fringes of this nightmare. You can't escape it, Jake. This memory is bound to you. No. He screamed, breaking the chains of silence. I'm not defined by this. I can change it. With each declaration, the weight of his father's absence began to dissolve. The shadows retreated slightly, revealing sunlight streaming through the window. The boy blinked, finally noticing his older self. Who are you? I'm you. Jake shouted, forcing the truth into the space. The you who learns to fight. We can be more than this memory. The boy's expression changed, confusion knitting his brows. But I'm scared. Fear is part of us. Jake replied fiercely, leaning into the light. But it doesn't have to control us. We have to choose to remember our strength. For a second, the shadows quivered and then recoiled, retreating from the radiant light that filled the room. The boy looked up, a spark of hope igniting in his eyes, but the moment was short-lived. The cloaked figure broke through the remnants of fading darkness. You think illumination grants you freedom? It hissed, each word dripping with malice. You can't undo the past merely by shouting over it. The room shifted like sand, dissolving beneath them. In moments, it transformed into a high school corridor. Jake was confronted with faded echoes, laughter behind closed doors, whispers that mocked weakness. Here, the insecurities linger, the voice of the figure twisted through the air, thundering inside Jake's skull. You were never good enough. Suddenly, the lockers slammed open, releasing torrents of memories, moments of embarrassment, rejection, and anger that loomed larger than life. Faces twisted in mocking mirth loomed in the shadows, their laughter spiking dread deep within Jake's core. Stop it! Jake yelled, stepping forward, fists clenched. Shut up! I refuse to be that kid anymore. A surge of energy pulsed through him, igniting into flames of courage. The darkness around him began to shred, each memory dissolving with the clarity of his defiance. I am not the weight of these memories. I've grown beyond them. For every laugh that echoed, a pulse of light resonated from within him. As the shadows thinned, he felt the past loosening its grip, even as they writhed angrily, seeking to tighten around him again. With a roar of determination, Jake charged toward the figure. Your games are over. I own my story now. But just as he reached the figure, the shadows stabbed forward, piercing his heart, wrapping tightly once more. The cloak billowed around him, threatening to reel him back into oblivion. In an instant, everything fell silent. Jake loomed on the precipice, heart hammering, battling against the suffocating cold. What horrors were still left? Untold. Which parts of his soul still lingered in the shadows waiting to ensnare him? Do you have what it takes? The figure whispered ominously, its ghastly grin stretching wider. Or will the depths of despair consume you whole? Jake's breath hitched as memory after memory flooded in, battling for attention, each a doorway to a truth he both feared and needed to confront. Where would this struggle take him? What memories would he have to face next? Would he embrace the fight or let the shadows take him once again? As the figure loomed nearer, darkness swirled, spiraling into a vortex, ready to pull him deeper into the unknown as Jake braced himself for the next wave of his past and the shocking revelations yet to come. Jake felt the darkness swirl around him, striking with icy fingers that craved his despair. He battled against the shadows, fought fiercely within the abyss of his memories, yet here he stood on the brink of submission. The cloaked figure loomed close, its hollow eyes flickering, revealing the abyss that lay within its depths. Do you really think, it hissed, taunting, that you can conquer the shadows of your heart? That you can rewrite what has been etched in darkness? No, Jake spat, breathing heavily. I refuse to be defined by you. With every ounce of terror laid bare in the figure's gaze, Jake was reminded of the countless faces from his past, those who had cast him aside in high school, the weight of expectations he continuously failed to meet, and the specter of his father's absence an echo that had haunted him for years. But now, facing that ghost, he felt an ember of resolve spark within him. Memories are not chains, he continued, taking a deliberate step forward, his heart racing with purpose. They're pieces of our story. They shape us, but they do not dictate who we are. The shadows roared back, furious, swirling like a raging tempest. The cloaked figure writhed, its form flickering between visibility and obscurity. You cannot escape the truth. The past binds you, it is your prison. But it also lights the way, Jake insisted, voice unwavering. He steadied his breaths, recalling the laughter with friends, those warm summer days by the lake, the first strum of his father's guitar that resonated within him, the moments of kindness that had cut through the pain. Those are my truths. He saw the shadows react, they faltered slightly, momentarily pushed back by the warmth that ignited in his heart. Each memory, a thread of light weaving through the darkness. He fought against the rising dread, challenging the shadows, ready to embrace the joy that had always been submerged beneath layers of hurt. Together. He called out, envisioning his friends beside him, their hearts aligned, their strengths pooling into a collective force. He knew they were waiting for him, that they too carried their burdens, but in this moment, he would lead the charge. Jake closed his eyes, drawing deeply from within. I choose to remember. I choose to stand up. Together, we will rewrite our stories. The echoes of their history melded into a symphony, a powerful chorus underscoring their pact against the darkness. No. The figure shrieked, shrill and desperate as the shadows surrounding it howled, flickering in disarray. The collective light surged, pushing back against the vile entity that had tormented them. The shadows writhed, twisting in protest, but light permeated every corner, enveloping Jake and consuming the shadows, stringing them together like threads to be woven into something new. Suddenly, the cloaked figure began to disintegrate, shrieking, "You think you've won? This is merely a facade. The shadows return, and when they do, they will come for you." As the figure shattered into a million fragments of darkness, Jake stumbled back, gasping for breath. He felt an overwhelming rush of warmth surge through him, an embrace from the memories of his loved ones, an invincible bond forged through the fires of adversity. Jake blinked, reality shifting around him as the remnants of shadows faded. The world seemed lighter, a sunrise breaking through a once dark night. He was back with his friends, together again under the soft glow of dawn. We did it, we actually did it. Lisa exclaimed, tears shimmering. Tom squeezed her shoulder, laughter bubbling over their relief. Sarah looked at Jake, eyes sparkling. You led us. You showed us how to fight. But Jake shook his head, heart soaring with gratitude. It was all of us. We're stronger together. We faced our truths and emerged without the shadows to bind us. The laughter spilled from their lips, a joyous release that echoed across the landscape, a promise of rebirth and healing. Yet in the distance, memories whispered softly, reminding them that the shadows might lurk, but they had the light to guide them. As they stood shoulder to shoulder, Jake knew that what had been a battle for survival was not the end, but the beginning of something magnificent, stories waiting to be told, brighter than the darkest depths they had conquered. As they turned back towards their hometown, a renewed sense of purpose blossomed within them, ready to embrace everything the world had to offer together. The sun rose higher, gilding the horizon, shining brighter with hope ignited by the strength of their unity. The Dark Walker may have attempted to shackle them, but they had broken free, their journey now forged anew. And in the quiet stillness of the morning, a shared vow lingered, echoing through their soul: no darkness would ever steal their light again. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss our next adventure, where we explore even deeper stories of resilience and triumph against the odds. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and show some love. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories. We want to hear your thoughts on this epic conclusion, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring story.